Doing business in Turkey. Today we are diving into something really important for anyone looking to start or expand their business in Turkey. According to the Turkish Commercial Code, there are 5 types of companies in Turkey. Joint stock companies, limited liability companies, collective companies, limited partnerships which are divided into 2, ordinary limited partnerships and limited partnerships divided into shares, and cooperatives. Under Turkish law, companies are categorized into capital companies and sole proprietorships. Capital companies include joint stock companies and limited liability companies, where shareholders have limited liability, meaning they are only responsible for the capital they have contributed. Sole proprietorships, on the other hand, consist of collective and limited partnerships, which partners having unlimited liability. The most prevalent company types in Turkey are joint stock companies and limited liability companies. Joint stock companies and limited liability companies are the most common business structures in Turkey. So about 82% of all companies are limited companies and 13% are joint stock companies, and cooperatives account for 4%. Collective and limited partnerships companies make up around 1%. Let's talk about joint stock companies. A joint stock company is a type of company with a defined capital that is divided into shares, and it is responsible for its liabilities only with its assets. Shareholders are liable to the company only to the extent of the capital they have committed. The minimum required capital to establish a joint stock company is 250,000 Turkish liras, which is roughly $7,500. At least 25% of the nominal value of shares committed in cash must be paid before registration, with the remaining amount payable within 24 months following the company's registration. The payment schedule can either be set in the company's articles of association or determined by the board of directors. Each joint stock company has written articles of association that are registered with the trade registry in the city where the company's headquarters is located. A joint stock company can be established with a single shareholder. Both real and legal persons are eligible to be shareholders. These companies can issue both registered and bearer shares to represent ownership. They can also issue bonds and other debt instruments. In general, shareholders can freely transfer their shares without the need for General Assembly approval. Joint stock companies are the only type of company that can offer shares to the public. Shares can be traded on the stock exchange. Joint stock companies that engage in specific activities or meet certain financial thresholds regarding the assets, revenue, or number of employees are subject to independent audits. The 2 governing bodies of a joint stock company are the General Assembly and the Board of Directors. The General Assembly, where all shareholders are represented, has exclusive authority to make significant decisions regarding the company. The Board of Directors is responsible for the overall management and representation of the company. It may consist of a single member, and board members are not required to be Turkish citizens or residents. Let's talk about limited liability companies. A limited liability company is a business structure with a defined capital that is divided into shares, and it is only responsible for its debt with its own assets. A limited liability company can be formed by a single shareholder. The number of shareholders cannot exceed 50. Both individuals and legal persons can be shareholders. Shareholders are not personally liable for company debts. They are only obligated to pay the capital they have committed. However, they are responsible for the company's unpaid public debt up to the amount of their shareholding. The minimum capital required to establish a limited liability company is 50,000 Turkish liras, approximately $1,500. The nominal value of the primary capital shares can be set at a minimum of 25 Turkish liras or multiples thereof. It is possible to pay all of the cash capital within 24 months of the company's registration, so they don't have to pay anything while registering the company. The payment schedule can either be set in the company contract or determined by the directors. A limited liability company has a written company contract that is registered with the trade registry, where the headquarters is located. In a limited company, only registered shares can be issued, and bearer shares are not allowed to be issued. Limited companies cannot offer shares to the public. The transfer of shares in a limited company requires approval from the General Assembly. Limited companies are governed by 2 bodies, the General Assembly and the Board of Directors. The General Assembly, where all shareholders are represented, has exclusive authority over key company decisions. The Board of Directors is responsible for management and representation, and the company can operate with just 1 director. At least 1 director must be a partner in the company, but there are no residency or citizenship requirements for directors. Now let's talk about collective company and limited partnerships. Collective companies are established with at least 2 shareholders, and only real persons can be shareholders. Shareholders in a collective company have second-degree unlimited liability for the company's debts. Each shareholder has the right and duty to manage the company individually unless otherwise assigned by the agreement or a majority decision. There's no capital requirements for collective companies. There are 2 types of limited partnerships: ordinary limited partnerships and limited partnerships divided into shares. An ordinary limited partnership is a sole proprietorship, while a limited partnership divided into shares is a capital company. The defining feature of a limited partnership is that it has both limited and unlimited liability shareholders. At least 2 people are required to establish a limited partnership, with 1 active partner who has unlimited liability and 1 dormant partner who has limited liability. Only real persons can be active partners, but both real and legal persons can be dormant partners. Let's talk about cooperatives. Cooperatives are associations of varying memberships formed by real and legal persons to meet their professional or livelihood needs through mutual assistance, labor, and financial contributions. Cooperative must have at least 7 shareholders to be established. In Turkey, company establishment procedures can be completed within an hour, provided that all necessary documents are submitted to the relevant trade registry office. Foreign investors may establish companies in Turkey under the same rules as domestic investors or acquire shares in existing Turkish companies. They can also exit the company by transferring their shares to others. In joint stock companies, shares can be either registered or bearer shares. The transfer of bearer shares is done by the transfer of possession, while registered shares are transferred through the transfer of turnover and possession. Except in specific cases, it is not possible to limit the transfer of shares in joint stock companies. Additionally, share transfers are not subject to registration or public announcements. In limited companies, share transfer involves 3 steps. The parties sign and notarize a share transfer agreement first. Second, unless otherwise stated in the company contract, the General Assembly must approve the transfer of shares. And third, the share transfer is announced in the Turkish Trade Registry Gazette. So that was a quick summary of companies and business structures of Turkey. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for listening.